Picture this, a professional athlete so reckless that analysts are saying she'd get disqualified from MMA fights. We're not talking about some underground fighter or hockey enforcer. We're talking about DiJonai Carrington, a WNBA guard who's managed to turn women's basketball into her personal demolition derby. This season alone, she leads the entire league in flagrant fouls. And that's just what the refs actually caught. The incidents they missed? Even more disturbing, from yanking players to the ground by their hair to poking the league's biggest star in the eye during the playoffs, Carrington isn't just crossing lines anymore. She's erasing them completely. And the most shocking part? The WNBA seems perfectly fine letting it happen. But after her latest stunt, even the most patient fans are calling for blood. Some want suspensions. Others want her banned entirely. The question isn't whether she's gone too far, it's whether the league will finally do something about it before someone gets seriously hurt. The incident that finally broke the internet happened during what should have been a routine game between the Dallas Wings and Los Angeles Sparks. Third quarter, loose ball situation, nothing unusual, until Carrington decided to grab opponent, Sarah Ashley Barker, by the ponytail and yank her to the floor like she was in a street fight. The arena went silent. Replays showed everything in brutal slow motion. Carrington's hand gripping the hair, the violent pull, Barker crashing down helplessly. It wasn't basketball. It was assault with witnesses. What did the referees call? Oh, loose ball foul. Not flagrant, not technical. Just a basic foul like she'd bumped into someone accidentally. Commentators were stunned into silence before erupting with disbelief. Social media exploded instantly. The clip went viral within hours, racking up millions of views as fans shared it with captions like, "How is this legal?" and "Where's the ejection?" Even casual basketball fans who couldn't name 5 WNBA players knew exactly who DiJonai Carrington was by the end of that night. But here's where it gets really ugly. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment mistake. Video analysis shows Carrington looking directly at Barker's ponytail before making her move. She calculated it, targeted it, and executed it. Former players called it premeditated. Current players whispered about it in locker rooms. The message was clear. If you've got long hair and you're playing against Carrington, you're a target. And the league's response? Dead silence. The hair-pulling incident was just the latest chapter in what's becoming the most controversial storyline in women's basketball. Rewind to the WNBA playoffs last September, when the basketball world watched in horror as Carrington poked Indiana Fever rookie sensation Caitlin Clark directly in the eye during Game 1 of their first-round series. Clark, the league's brightest new star and biggest ratings draw, was bringing the ball up court when Carrington's hand found her face. The contact was unmistakable. Clark immediately grabbed her eye and hit the floor in pain. What made the situation even more infuriating was how Carrington handled the aftermath. Instead of showing any remorse or concern for Clark's well-being, she was caught on camera laughing about it with teammates. The optics were horrible. League's biggest star gets assaulted, suffers a black eye, and the perpetrator thinks it's funny. Social media went nuclear. Suspend Carrington started trending. Former WNBA players spoke out. Basketball legends called for discipline. Everyone was watching to see how Commissioner Kathy Engelbert would respond. The answer? She didn't. No fine, no suspension, no public statement, nothing. The message to players was crystal clear. You can physically assault the face of the league and face 0 consequences. The message to fans was even worse. Player safety doesn't matter if it might upset certain narratives or protect certain players. The silence from the top was deafening, and it only emboldened Carrington to keep pushing boundaries. But what really pushed this controversy into overdrive wasn't just the accumulation of dirty plays. It was how Carrington responded to criticism. Instead of taking responsibility or showing any sign of changed behavior, she doubled down. She took to social media to play the victim, claiming she was being unfairly targeted by fans and media. She suggested that criticism of her play style was somehow discriminatory. She portrayed herself as a misunderstood competitor rather than what she actually was, a serial line crosser putting other players at risk. The peak of her tone-deaf response came months after the Clark eye poke, when she was caught on Instagram Live with Fever player Nalissa Smith. During their cooking session, Smith accidentally poked Carrington in the eye while turning around. Carrington's response? "You poked me in the eye," followed by laughter and obvious references to the Clark incident. She was literally mocking the moment she gave the league's biggest star a black eye. The clip went viral again, but this time the reaction was pure disgust. Sports commentators started doing the math publicly. 3 confirmed flagrant fouls in a month, multiple other incidents that should have been flagged but weren't, leading the entire league in dangerous plays. The numbers told an undeniable story of a player completely out of control. Yet Commissioner Engelbert remained silent. No statements about player safety, no reviews of officiating, no acknowledgement that anything was wrong. The league's inaction became almost as controversial as Carrington's actions. What made the situation even more maddening for fans was the double standard they perceived. Other players had faced serious discipline for far less egregious behavior. Technical fouls for arguing with refs, suspensions for verbal altercations, fines for social media posts, but somehow, physically assaulting opponents was being treated as acceptable basketball. The hypocrisy was staggering, and it was driving away both longtime fans and newcomers who tuned in specifically to watch Caitlin Clark. Because that's what this ultimately comes down to. Caitlin Clark represents the future of women's basketball. Her rookie season brought unprecedented attention, television ratings, and revenue to the WNBA. She's the generational talent the sport has been waiting for, capable of elevating the entire league to new heights. When Carrington targets Clark specifically and repeatedly, she's not just attacking one player. She's attacking the sport's growth potential and its ability to reach mainstream audiences. Clark herself has handled the situation with remarkable grace, consistently taking the high road and refusing to escalate tensions publicly. When asked about the eye poke, she diplomatically suggested it wasn't intentional, despite video evidence to the contrary. When questioned about other incidents, she focused on her own play rather than criticizing opponents. Her professionalism has been exemplary, which only makes Carrington's behavior look worse by comparison. Corporate sponsors are quietly taking notice too. The WNBA's growth depends on maintaining a positive image and protecting its marquee players. When highlights of dangerous fouls go viral for all the wrong reasons, it damages the brand. When the league's response to violence is silence, it raises questions about leadership and priorities. Marketing executives don't want their brands associated with a sport that appears to condone dirty play, especially when it targets the athletes bringing in new audiences. The referee situation adds another layer of controversy. Multiple incidents show officials either missing obvious fouls or downgrading them to lesser penalties. The hair pull that should have been an ejection became a loose ball foul. The eye poke that left Clark with a black eye wasn't called at all. The pattern suggests either incompetence or instruction from above to avoid making waves. Either explanation is damaging to the league's credibility. Former players and current analysts have started speaking out more boldly. Some have suggested that certain players receive preferential treatment from officials based on politics rather than performance. Others have pointed to specific games where dangerous plays were ignored while technical fouls were called for minor infractions. The inconsistency in officiating has become its own scandal, with Carrington at the center of multiple controversial non-calls. What's particularly frustrating for fans is how obvious the solution appears. Consistent enforcement of existing rules would solve most of these problems immediately. Flagrant fouls already carry automatic suspensions after accumulating enough of them. Dangerous plays already have defined penalties. The framework exists. The league just refuses to use it when it comes to certain players in certain situations. The international perspective adds another dimension to consider. Women's basketball is growing globally, with increased interest from European and Asian markets. When highlights of WNBA games show players being yanked to the ground by their hair or poked in the eye without consequences, it reinforces negative stereotypes about American sports culture. International viewers expect professionalism and player safety. What they're seeing instead is barely controlled chaos. Social media has amplified every aspect of this controversy. Every Carrington foul gets dissected frame by frame. Every league non-response gets screenshotted and shared. Every attempt at deflection or victim playing gets ridiculed mercilessly. The court of public opinion has already rendered its verdict, and it's overwhelmingly against both Carrington and the league's handling of the situation. The hashtags tell the story. Dirty player, suspend Carrington, protect Clark. Player safety advocates have begun using Carrington's case as an example of what's wrong with modern officiating across all sports. The reluctance to make difficult calls in high-profile situations, the tendency to let politics influence penalty decisions, the prioritization of storylines over actual rulebook enforcement. These aren't just basketball problems, they're sports, culture problems that extend far beyond the WNBA. The timing couldn't be worse for the league's long-term goals. Women's basketball is experiencing unprecedented growth and mainstream acceptance. Television deals are getting bigger. Attendance is rising. Corporate interest is increasing. This should be a golden age for the sport. Instead, the dominant storyline has become whether the league can protect its own players from assault. That's not the narrative any growing sport wants to manage. Looking ahead, the pressure on Commissioner Engelbert is becoming unsustainable. Every game Carrington plays without meaningful discipline damages the league's credibility further. Every dangerous play that goes unpunished emboldens other players to test boundaries. Every social media post mocking injured opponents reinforces the perception that the WNBA doesn't take player safety seriously. Something has to give, and soon. The fee precedent being set extends far beyond one controversial player. If Carrington can accumulate multiple flagrant fouls, injure marquee players, mock her victims publicly, and face no real consequences, what message does that send to every other player in the league? What's to stop others from adopting similar tactics? The potential for copycat behavior is real and frightening. International women's leagues are watching this situation closely too. They see an opportunity to position themselves as more professional and safer alternatives to the WNBA. European leagues are already using the Carrington controversy in recruiting materials, suggesting that their competitions offer better player protection and more consistent officiating. The WNBA risks losing talent to international alternatives if safety concerns persist. The fan engagement aspect cannot be ignored either. Comment sections are flooded with demands for action. Attendance at Carrington's games has become contentious, with some fans actively rooting against her team regardless of their usual loyalties. Merchandise sales for players perceived as dirty have dropped noticeably. The business impact of inaction is becoming measurable and concerning for team owners. Youth basketball programs are struggling with how to address the situation too. Young players see WNBA highlights and naturally want to emulate their heroes. When those highlights include hair-pulling and eye-poking without consequences, it creates teaching challenges for coaches trying to emphasize sportsmanship and safety. The trickle-down effect reaches every level of the sport. The medical community has also weighed in, particularly regarding head and eye injuries. Multiple doctors have publicly stated that Carrington's typical fouls carry serious risk of permanent damage. Eye injuries can end careers. Head trauma can cause lasting neurological problems. Hair pulling can cause neck injuries. These aren't minor infractions with temporary consequences. They're potentially life-altering assaults disguised. As basketball plays, legal experts have begun discussing whether the WNBA's inaction could expose them to liability issues. If a player suffers serious injury from obviously dangerous plays that the league chose not to prevent, questions about negligence and duty of care become relevant. The business risk extends beyond public relations into potential courtroom consequences. What makes this entire situation even more surreal is how predictable it all was. Sports leagues have dealt with dirty players throughout history. The solutions are well established: consistent officiating, meaningful penalties, clear communication about standards. The WNBA had every tool necessary to prevent this controversy from exploding. They simply chose not to use them. The international media has started covering this story too, often with bewilderment about American sports culture. European outlets describe the situation as incomprehensible, wondering how a professional league can allow such behavior to continue unchecked. The global perception of American women's basketball is being damaged by one player's actions and one league's inaction. As we move forward, every stakeholder in women's basketball faces a choice. Players can speak up for safety or stay silent for politics. Coaches can demand protection for their athletes or hope nothing bad happens. Fans can continue supporting a league that appears indifferent to violence or find other entertainment options. The commissioner can finally take action or continue pretending problems don't exist. The clock is ticking, and the stakes couldn't be higher. DiJonai Carrington has already shown she won't change her behavior voluntarily. The officiating crew has proven they won't enforce rules consistently without direction from above. The only variable left is whether league leadership will finally prioritize player safety over whatever concerns have kept them silent so far. The entire future of women's basketball might depend on that decision. The WNBA stands at a crossroads. They can continue down the current path, where dirty play is tolerated and victims are ignored, risking everything they've built over decades. Or they can finally take the decisive action that player safety, fan expectation, and basic human decency demand. The choice shouldn't be difficult. The fact that it apparently is tells you everything you need to know about where priorities really lie. Time will tell whether the league chooses courage or convenience. But one thing is absolutely certain: the whole world is watching, and the whole world is waiting for an answer to a very simple question. In the WNBA, do rules matter or don't they? DiJonai Carrington has already given her answer through her actions. Now it's the league's turn to respond.